This is the Sales Babble Podcast, episode 202. It's the Time to Sell Mindset, an interview with author Chris Spurvey.
Welcome to Sales Babble, the podcast that shares selling secrets for non-sellers. And now your host, Pat Helmers.
Hello, Sales Babblers. This is Pat Helmers. And yes, I have overcome the flu, and I am back here in the Sales Babble studio. Wow, did that throw me for a loop. And I can't think of the last time when I haven't published a podcast on Tuesday. It's been years. So I apologize, and I appreciate your patience in that I'm a little bit late this week. So today's interview is going to be with Chris Spurvey. He's the author of the book, It's Time to Sell, and he's also a podcast host. And Chris talks all about mindset in sales, but the way you get that is by having a vision, and he explains how he did that. He shares a story about how he struggled in sales and eventually became a sales manager by using this mindset of it's time to sell. In the end, Chris gives us some concrete examples using LinkedIn on how you can make things happen. So, with no further ado, let's get to it. Welcome, Chris. Are you ready to babble?
I'm ready. Let's rock and roll.
We've been laughing already. So, you are the author of the book, It's Time to Sell, Cultivating the Sales Mindset, correct?
You got it. That's who I am. I'm the author of that book.
I was reading it on Amazon, and I was reading actually the first paragraph of your first chapter, and it says, quote, "I woke up this morning with a familiar feeling of dread, the one that says my life is slipping away, the one that says not to review your goals unless you want to become even more depressed."
What an opening, hey? Did you continue reading, or was that all you read?
I was thinking, oh, damn, that guy was in a dark, dark place.
Oh, my, yeah. And I'd like to tell you it wasn't true, but it was.
So why don't you tell us about your dark place? And you seem kind of bubbly today. And how did you get out of that?
God, that's a really good question. I love the framing of that, and I would argue, it's funny because I often refer to myself today as Chris Spurvey 5.0, and we're all on this constant state of reinventing ourselves and through the journey of life, so to speak. Yeah. And the context of that opening chapter. Let maybe to step back. When I decided to author my book because I had been on a journey of being very uncomfortable with sales, being very uncomfortable with where I was in my life, following people, not having built good positive habits around my financial affairs, and so on. And I was at a point at that when I wrote the context of the first chapter of my book is right at the pit of despair, where I'm trying to make a decision. Am I going to make it in sales or am I not? And in that moment, I decided to go for it. And really, I ended up that day in the context of the book, I was invited to go to Fargo, North Dakota to a Science of Getting Rich seminar by Bob Proctor. And it was at that seminar that I really found myself. Let's just say that. So that's the context of the opening chapter. And the remainder of my book is really my journey of self-discovery around who I really was at my core, my unique abilities, my contribution to the world. And I would argue my life has been an upward spiral ever since. So that's the context behind that opening quote in that chapter.
Self-discovery. In fact, that's what this book's really about, is about a mindset.
You got it. Yeah. I mean, so the at its core, I'm a big believer that in order to achieve what we want out of life, if we, we need to have a goal, we need to have a vision for our future, and it's that vision that is, if it's really compelling and it's drawing in all the senses, that's the sense of sight, smell, taste, touch, feel, whatever, all those senses and it's really compelling, it's going to motivate us to take actions forward. And so the mindset behind piece of my book is really all about building that vision for our lives that's compelling enough to make us go out and act powerfully. I'm a really big believer in mindset because it's really what turned my life around.
Well, what's wrong with just winging it? What's wrong with, taking a point of view of like, I'm going to take what life gives me and take it a day at a time, just like, you hear the sports guys say, we're just going to play it a game at a time. What's wrong with that?
Well, I think it's okay to do it that way once you have your vision in place. But, I liken a vision to, I'm sitting in a room right now. I'm looking at the wall and there's a thermostat on the wall and I can go over and I can turn up the heat. And if I turn up the heat, everything, the electricity in my house is going to kick in and it's going to just outpour the right level of energy to bring the heat up to the temperature I've set on the thermostat. However, if I keep it cold, well, obviously it's not going to kick in, right? And I mean, and once you have that vision, really what you'll find is, a successful life is really comprised of successful days. So, focusing every single day on getting out there and celebrating small wins and doing some small things, they really do compile to have a very, a successful life moving in the direction of your vision. I find for me personally anyway, and through all the people I've worked with in the last number of years, that if you don't have something to be working towards, you're really, you're like a ship out on the ocean bobbing up and down, and you will not arrive at any sort of port of call if you don't have a direction for your life. So, I really believe fundamentally you do need that. Now there are some people that perhaps are, just they're different personalities and they're just go-lucky kind of people. I'd like to believe that you can have your cake and eat it too. You can be be directionally focused, but on a daily basis, you can be happy with your day, and it's just a matter of setting up some daily routines that make you happy with that particular day.
So when I was reading that quote from your book, you were in a spot in your life where you didn't really have a vision?
I had a desire, I guess you could say. I wanted to be more than I was on that particular day. So I had that desire, but I had never sat down and really identified what it is I want, right? And when I did that, I started to feel the energy and I started to move myself in that direction.
So how do we distinguish then desire from having a mindset of your vision? Like lots of people have this idea, like, I'd like to lose weight.
Yeah.
And a lot of people set up, goals to do that. And then those goals don't get met. and then January 1st comes along and you redo it all over again.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I think it's a journey we have to commit to, and when I sit down every January, or actually it's not even every January, it's late December, and I'm about to enter the phase again. It's like every year I sit down and just do a little inventory of where I am in the moment, and try to decide what it is I want in my upcoming year, and I kind of look out 3 years and 5 years and just say, what do I want? I only have one sort of swing at with the bat. What do I want out of this life for my family, for myself, and that encompasses wealth, it encompasses health, and so on. I just find for me, if you create the vision and you supplement that vision with some other things, like I really believe in taking a few minutes every day and just relaxing and spending a bit of time, envisioning yourself living the vision. And if you do that and you do that consistently, I guarantee you'll notice things happening in your life that, if you had never decided that's what you wanted, you wouldn't even notice them, or you wouldn't be moving towards them. When I like that book my book was written in 2014, and the final chapter in that book is me, is my vision at that particular point in time. It's me sitting at a cottage with a dog at my feet, with the fire roaring in the middle of winter, and and it's me wanting to become a person who helps people see sales differently. And that's when the whole book was my I embarked on the journey at that particular point in time. Well, fast forward 3.5, 4 years later, and that's what I'm doing. I am speaking all over North America. I have my podcast. I'm doing it full time. I'm in charge of my own destination. I don't work for anybody else, and that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted in my vision back then. Today, my vision is a little bit different. It's progressively moving forward, right? I'm in the Canadian Rockies, and I'm speaking at an international convention. I'm traveling to Toronto to work with a corporate client and going to see the Toronto Maple Leafs play the Montreal Canadiens. So all that to say, we are progressively change. We progressively grow, and if we just have a vision for today and that's it, then you just need to always be evolving that vision, in my opinion. That's my belief.
So this is a sales podcast. So why don't we focus on the mindset of a great sales professional? What do you believe that to be? What do you believe that to be?
Yeah, well, I think there's and let me maybe just tell you a very quick story, because this journey began for me when I was the chairman of the local technology association, and I asked entrepreneurs, 30 of them, what were the words that came to mind when they thought about sales, and the words I got back, and this is back in 2014, about a month before I started to write my book. The words were all negative, objection fighting, sleazy, slimy, you name it. And it was because, like me, they were, I guess, introduced to sales as being something that's pushy and something that you move people towards the close, you push people, so to speak. And so my belief is that if you frame sales to be of service, you frame sales to be problem solving, you start to leverage some of your own unique abilities and unique gifts and strengths, you can view sales very differently. And the activities then of sales, which is, reaching out to people, it's sitting down, talking to people, identifying their problems, it feels a whole lot differently than if you were looking at it through the lens of pushing people towards the close, right? So it's really not about that. And like I say, it's if you can frame sales to be being of service, problem solving. I always say, if you can go to bed at night thinking or believing that you're helping somebody else have a greater sleep at night, then you're really doing a great job in the area of sales or entrepreneurship with a sales angle. So that's my thought around mindset.
A greater sleep.
Yeah, well, yeah. If you're helping your clients have a really good night's sleep and they don't have the problem that you solve to worry about, what greater joy is there than that, right?
So how do we attain that?
How do our clients attain that? That's what. So my belief is,
how do we help them attain that, like through this mindset?
Sorry, let me understand that. How do we help our clients do that, or how do we help other salespeople or ourselves?
Well, I was thinking more in the context of exactly what you said. You said that if you can get your clients to sleep better at night, because there's things, there are some fears that they're expressing. There's some desires that they're not reaching. There's something that's troubling them deeply. And if we are somehow satisfying that need, so that they have a good night's sleep, it's how can we reach that mindset?
Yeah, well, no, I got you now. And really, as we get into relationships with our clients, we build that trust. We have to get deep in understanding what their individual motivations are. And when you first meet somebody, a potential client, obviously trust is not necessarily built. So you ask questions that help you build trust. And what you end up getting back typically are business motivations, which are not obviously personal motivations. And then as you ask more questions and listen very, very attentively to the answers, and you share yourself and you share your beliefs with that individual, trust is starting to be built, and that happens over a series of meetings. It's important that we, and it also depends on what you're selling, right? But if you're selling a solution to a person's individual motivations, an individual problems, you're wanting to ask questions at a deeper and deeper level, and to get to the personal buying motivations. So whether that's they're looking to get promoted within their organizations, solidify their own career path, and so on, through asking those questions and listening, and then framing your solution to their individual personal buying motivations, then you're hitting a home run. So my belief is that in order to get to that level, you got to be asking the right questions, and you got to be showing at a psychological level, I guess, that you're really in tune with what they're saying and desiring to solve their problems. Our buyers feel at a subconscious level, an intuitive level, if we're looking out for them. We're looking for a win-win scenario versus we, the seller, winning and them, the buyer, losing, so to speak, right? So we want to really get into a true, genuine, deep relationship with our buyers.
What's the struggle with that, though? People don't do that. Sellers don't do that.
Yeah, and I mean, that goes back, I believe, to many of us are introduced to sales in a non-natural way, right? And so for me, I go back to early 1980s, when my mom and dad were Sunday evening, and the doorbell rang, and it was the Electrolux vacuum cleaner salesman, door-to-door salesman, and mom and dad welcomed him into our house, and I witnessed in 45 minutes them buying a $3,000 vacuum, and then they thought about it for the next 2 months as they tried to figure out how they were going to pay for it, because no matter what objection they threw up to the salesperson, he had a reply that flipped it, and so that's how I was introduced to sales back in the early 1980s, and I had to shed that to be truly effective at sales myself, right? I had to reframe it, as I've already talked about. Then also additionally, what ends up happening when some salespeople get into organizations, depending on the way compensation is structured and so on, they start to shift and move towards sort of win-lose and type of decisions on behalf of buyers, right? So we really want to be trying our best to set up win-win relationships. And if you're not in an organization that enables that, then maybe you're not in the right organization, or you should go on a voyage of trying to find that within that organization.
Maybe you could tell us a story of when you figured this out. Was there this one deal that you were working on there you were going, Pat, that was it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, in the context of my book, I tell a story. My book is a story, by the way. It's a narrative, as you could probably tell from the opening introduction. But around that time, I was working in sales for a professional services organization, and they brought in a new director who I was reporting to, and he changed around my compensation plan within his first month. He changed it from to move in the direction of being activity based, meaning, in other words, in order for me to earn my bonus or my commission, I had to talk to and meet a certain number of new prospects every single month, and that changed up the dynamic for me personally.
Okay, so you were being measured on, or you're actually being compensated on activity versus closing sales? Prior. It was really I was being compensated on a percentage of revenue, and every dollar that came in, I got a percentage of it. And then what happened? So I had built up a certain level of income based on that, and we were sailing fairly smoothly. And the owners wanted to expand, and so they hired this new guy, and he changed up. He took a large portion of my earned commission and changed it into activity based, and that changed the dynamic. All of a sudden I found myself with 3 days left in the month having to look at my number of new contacts for that particular month and just do whatever it takes to get out and meet new people. And it just took it just changed the dynamic for me and me personally. So
that came to a bit of a head because really our revenues actually started to decline with that change. So what I decided to do was take the bull by the horn, so to speak, and I did a lot of research around, what is it that enables professional services organizations to grow. And I really got to the root of a professional services organization is when you have your consultants who are true trusted advisors to their clients. And so I began to compile lots of studies and research on this, and I started to send it to the owners of the organizations they weren't very happy with the direction of our revenues at that particular point. And so I'll never forget it. I ended up going on a trip to Ottawa with the primary owner, and we left the meeting, and the owner looked at me and said, Joe, and that's not his real name, Joe was just fired, and you're now our new vice president of business development. And I became the leader of sales for the organization from that point forward. And that's when we started to really, truly build relationships with our clients, right?
Congratulations.
Yeah. So that's about 10 years, but I 10 years ago. But I basically created the sales culture by going above my boss at that particular point. But that's sometimes what you got to do when you believe in what you believe, right?
What's the mistake your boss made? This new sales guy, your sales manager did.
Yeah, he had come from a transactional sales environment, and so he made the mistake of believing that a relationship-based or a professional services organization needed to have a bit of a transactional culture. So that's what he was trying to do, create more of a transactional culture than versus a relationship-based culture.
And it sounds like the owners they really didn't think this out when they hired him.
No, well, yeah, you nailed it. He must have charmed them with the ideas that, hey, we need to become activity-based salespeople, but obviously that didn't work in our environment, and I don't believe that would work. That does not work, in my opinion, in larger, complex sales, right? I mean, if you're out there selling cell phones or your products, then maybe where it's a commodity-based selling, but not in a complex, strategic-based sales environment.
How'd you like being a manager?
When I became vice president?
Mm-hmm.
I liked it. I mean, for me, having a vision for where I wanted to go, I mean, it served its purpose at that particular point in time. I gained some great experience working with the sales team from that point forward. And I've got tons of great stories now that I'm able to leverage in growing my personal brand and in helping other entrepreneurs and sales professionals grow in the direction of true relationship-based selling.
So maybe could you give our listeners some advice on the kinds of things it would take for them to cultivate a sales mindset?
Yeah, I've talked a lot about vision. So having a strong vision for your future is number one. I really believe, in showing gratitude every single day for what you presently have, because if you're not grateful for what you have, you're not exactly welcoming new things into your life. Going into your relationships with the intention of serving and helping your new client, your new prospective client. I also am a big believer in learning. I mean, I really believe in diving in and getting to understand psychology. I mean, to me, that's the number one thing that a new sales professional should embrace is how the mind works and what motivates people to buy, right? And so spending time every single day, studying the mind and how it works, in my opinion, is a great use of time. And then obviously getting into a very structured environment where you create, I'm a real believer in being a hub for my network. So I've created an immense business today based around my personal brand. by committing to a few simple tasks every day. I leverage LinkedIn. I reach out to 3 people per day within my LinkedIn network, and I invite them to jump on a virtual Skype or Zoom or meet 3 people face to face per day. And when I invite 3, I typically get 1 person per day. So I meet someone new once per day, and that person doesn't necessarily have to be an ideal client, but who knows who they know, right? And so I think it's a combination of coming at it with the right mindset, but also realizing that mindset will only take you so far. You need to be you need to be driven towards, wanting to get in front of people and with that right mindset.
Vision, gratitude, serving, learning, hub for networking.
Love it. Good summary.
I got that right?
You got it right. Wow. I got to write those down myself. Sometimes there's wisdom comes out of my mouth I don't even realize.
Chris, you're the smartest guy I've talked to all day.
I'm probably the only one, am I? It's pretty simple, though, when you really think about it. I think we have a tendency just to overcomplicate it, and that's the reality.
That is the reality, isn't it? It is the reality. So let's say I wanted to our listeners to take some action this week. Something simple, nothing too complex. What would you recommend them? Where would you recommend that they start?
Well, I mean, I carry around a mantra all the time that we are at any given point in time one conversation away from a breakthrough. At any point in time, you're one conversation away from a breakthrough at this particular moment, and I am as well. So I really believe that one action item that anyone can take is, hey, reach out to 3 people. 3 people who you've never spoken to before. I'm sure most of your listeners are leveraging LinkedIn. LinkedIn, in my opinion, is a gold mine. Get on there and truly embrace the opportunities that are presented on LinkedIn, and reach out to 3 people per day, starting today, and commit to talking to 1 new person per day and see where those conversations go.
I love it. I believe we are the conversations that we have.
Yeah, absolutely.
Getting in your own mind, being by yourself, that doesn't really move you forward.
No. I mean, Napoleon Hill nailed it in his book, Think and Grow Rich, when he talked about the power of the mastermind. When you're with somebody that's not only 2 minds, it's actually 3, right? Yeah. And if there's 3 people, there's 9. It's an exponential thing. Relationships are everything.
The thing, too, about LinkedIn, what I love about it is it really is designed to be 2 people having a conversation. It forces the way you can best leverage it is it with you and another person creating a conversation. It's not like Facebook where I post pictures, what we did last weekend, and everybody sees it and they like it. And
Yeah. And the predominant mindset of LinkedIn is professional, right? And that's what I love about it. I personally am all in on LinkedIn, and I dabble a little bit with Facebook, a little bit with Instagram, but I'm 99% of my activity is LinkedIn because the predominant mindset is professional. My ideal client is a professional, and there's not very much of the garbage you'll see on Facebook. Let's just say that.
Okay, so your book, It's Time to Sell, it's on Amazon.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you have a podcast, right?
Yeah. I've got the It's Time to Sell podcast, and I've got a second podcast, Entrepreneur Sales School, and you can go to salesschool.io, or you can go to chrisspurvey.com, and you'll see all my content link there.
Excellent. I'll make sure and place those links in the show notes. Any other links you want me to share?
No, I think that's great. I mean, if you go on we talked a little bit about LinkedIn. If you go on my website, chrisspurvey.com, right at the front, you'll see a button that'll drive you to my latest webinar. And my latest webinar is all about LinkedIn and 4 essential strategies for growing a prospect list and client base on LinkedIn. So feel free to check that out.
Oh, yep. I'm looking at it right now. Excellent.
You got it.
You're married to your childhood sweetheart, and you have 2 amazing children.
I do. 16 years old and 14 years old, and my wife and I have been together since we were 13. That's true.
Dude, that's terrific. Hey, Chris, thank you. Thank you very much for visiting us, babbling with us here on Sales Babble. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you. It was awesome.
To connect with Chris and learn all about his book, you can find links to that in the show notes at www.salesbabble.com/202. That's a big number, isn't it? 202. We've got archives, past archives in back catalog of episodes that talk all about those things. So when you go on the website, dig into that. You're going to find episodes that are just as fun and informative as the one that we've had here with Chris Spurvey. Did you enjoy today's episode? Tell your friends. Word of mouth is how we grow the podcast. And maybe, did this make you think about something? Did you have a comment or a question you'd like to ask? Don't hesitate to reach out. On the website, there is a link called Babble Me. Click on it, and I will get back to you. So it's time to wrap this up. Until next week, next Tuesday, take care and have a highly successful selling day.
Take you for listening to the Sales Babble podcast. Find us at www.salesbabble.com.